Oh, that's cool. What? Is that not connected to anything?
No, dude. Look at it.
What? Oh, that is so cool. So there's a gas in there.
Yeah, it's like a neon sign. I think it's a neon gas, but.
Oh, man.
Sort of like a danger that all these little fucking 1/4" or 1/8" wires are gonna fall into a plug. And so yeah, all the Eurorack goes into pretty much the WMD performance mixer, and we're gonna kind of have a focused look on the drum setup, the drum sequencing and modulation setup that I've got going on here. We're looking at the WMD Metron with 4 Volterra modulators and 2 quad attenuators to work in with that. All of the modulation is savable per pattern, per variation, 5 of which you have per pattern. So pretty much any, it's not best to think of it as an LFO because it's more of a knob turn recorder system. You generally give it a recorded input with knob turning or tell it values step by step in the sequencer, kind of XOX style, to make a modulation, and then it will loop it for you.
Can we hear an example?
We can hear an example of that, where if we've got, say, some hats here, we'll get some hats going. In here, and here, there. So we should be able to hear that in the recording. And so I've got that here. I can hit record and should be able to. And then it will record what I've done and do a volume swell with it. And then you can use that as any sort of, to modulate anything, a filter cutoff or whatever, but I'm kind of using it. It works well this way with the percussion. So if I don't like that, you can clear it, turn the knob, it's gone. And instead, if you want to be more precise with it and say, okay, I want these first 4 to be at a certain level, you can say I want them there, and then I want this one to be more quiet, and then this one to be full, and then this one to be 0. So now it's at each of those steps, it's moving to that level. You can see the indicator here, and I didn't have to record all of the other steps. It's holding where it was, so that's a more intentional way of doing it. If I decide I want to be more on the fly, just hit record, and then it will record over that. Turn off record, and there you go. If, say, you want less of that, so it's too aggressive, that's why I have these attenuators here. So instead, if you wanted to use something, let's say we could try this. That's running into the quad drum here, so we can turn that on here. Let's say we go with this sound. So we've got that guy and we want to use, that would be probably plugged into number 2 here. We could check it out, it's the red guy, it's number 2, so it would be number 2. And that will be probably modulating the mod input, which selects different samples. So if I want it to randomly select the sample, not randomly, modulation driven select a different sample, I can do it with this fader here, the second one. So say record, turn this, and it's not, you're not going to hear it yet because the fader's down on this attenuator, so it's not doing anything yet, but as I bring it up, now it's selecting different samples. The more I bring it up, it's going to select across a wider range of sample selection, but loop that and repeat it. If I want to select different samples now, it's still on record, I can just turn it again. And now it's selecting different samples, and I can trigger it faster here. So more triggers, and then if you adjust the mod dial, which is being modulated, that'll set the baseline, the offset, for which samples are being selected. And then you can play with those things together. So if you bring it all the way down, it no longer is modulating. Sorry, this one. So it's static. More triggers, less triggers. Select the offset for which sample you're doing. Give it some movement, some modulation, some more offset, turn it off, keep it static, change the number of triggers. So that combination of controls of offset, modulation, attenuation, and triggers and gates is very powerful for generating rhythms easily. A lot of the stuff comes out with that technique sounding pretty glitchy, but super flexible.
One thing you were talking about before was the amount of projects you can save, and
So,
the pattern length and stuff like that, which is pretty spectacular.
so that all of those things, you can still see these modulations going on here that I recorded in these two. All these ones are static because I haven't changed them, and they have a I've recorded a template that has those offset to a full value, so that when I initially program in a sequence, you can hear it. You don't have to program it in and then turn it up to full. It's naturally at full. So I've loaded that, but all of these are saved within each of the 5 variations in the pattern, and then within each pattern. So right now we're in pattern A. If we go to pattern B, it'll stop. There's nothing in it. So we've stopped all our modulation, and now if we go back to pattern A, all our modulation comes back. So that's saved in any of these if we want to duplicate it here. So I'll copy A to B. Now if we go over to B, it's the same. I can hit record and do a change here, which again we're not hearing because our attenuator's not up, and a new hat level swell, and that's now recorded into B, and we can go back to A. So this is our previous attenuator modulation, and then back to B. And then any of those can be saved into any of these memory slots, of which there are many pages. So there are, so that's many save slots, 5 per pattern, and a huge number of patterns, and a bunch of pages per, with those patterns. But then also the fact that these modulations right now are being based on a 16-step pattern. So this is just what you see here is a 16-step pattern, and our modulation is looping based on that. But that can be extended just like the patterns. So if you want to extend the pattern out to, say, 4 bars, you can do that with duplicate pattern length. Now we're running 4 bars. You'll see it. You'll see the tape head run through here, back to 1. But our modulation is still only 16 bars, or 16 beats, but it can be extended up to 256. So you can have incredibly long. All you would do would be say pattern length, turn the modulator to select it. You see the screen change there, and then it's asking you what you want to do with it. So if we want to say out to 8 pages, I think you hit here. Yeah, there. So now we have 8 pages of that modulation, and if I record it, we can do, if I selected the right one here, so we can stay a bunch of low here, and then a bunch of high. I'm going to just try clearing it to give us a better idea. So all high, and then all low, and then all high, and then somewhere in the middle. Yeah, there we go. So all low, then all high, so it's going through a much longer length of sequence of modulation. Savable per variation, per pattern, per page, to an insane amount. So, and then multiplied times 4 for all of 4 per Volterra, and then 4 Volterras. You can connect up to 16 of them for an infinite amount of modulation should you need that.
Nice.
It's more than most people will need. I'm still trying to figure out what to do with it. The idea is here that I've got a pretty static patch for most of my system, but then I've got flexible modulation here where I'll pull out these sets of 4. You know, I've got a Volterra going to the 4 inputs of the quad drum. So this one here, and this attenuator is running this module, and that's sort of how I keep track of what I'm doing at any one point in time. If I'm patching and I want to start on the Chimera and I'm making a sound on that, I'll pull it out of here and I'll run on that until I use as much modulation as I want. If I have some left over, I could use for something else, but it's easier to keep track of if you kind of go one module to one module, and then if you want to go work on another module and to work on a sound on the BIA or whatever, pick another Volterra and run it with that. And
who would you suggest this setup for? Like if someone's looking for something, like what would this bring to the table?
It's completely relying on Metron, and Metron is a drum sequencer. You can use it also for bass, which I haven't shown you, which is, I've just realized like 3 days ago, that is also super useful for doing all kinds of acid bass lines, and I'll show you that after in another video, I guess. But it relies on Metron, which is a drum sequencer. So this is really about having large drum sequencers, which is very expensive. So it's only for people that have big drum sequencer systems. If you've got lots of drum modules and a Metron and want some modulation, absolutely it's for you. That's who it's for.
And also I noticed too that the workflow is so quick.
Super fast. That's everything about Metron. If I'm not an old school synth guy, I can't compare it to everything. What I can say is the workflow on it is intuitive, super fast, super playable, and flexible, powerful, everything that you could want in a drum sequencer.